Finally. Finally. Finally! After 6 episodes, we finally learn how they get into Link Vrains. It is the SAO thing where their minds are just transported. It's put in their minds or whatever. But I sort of like the idea that they're in a blue sphere. For 2 reasons. A, it allows you to still do the cool kind of transformation scene and it still kind of makes sense. The other is that I always sort of felt like in Sword Art Online, while their bodies would be lying there with no mind in them, I always felt like really dumb to seriously disturbing shit would happen to them. Come on, you all know what I'm talking about. You all thought it too. But in this week, they chose to really clarify things, and it might seem small in the grand scheme of things, but it meant a lot to me. And this episode was interesting because we met Aoi, and more importantly, this episode felt very different. It kind of had a different tone. It sort of felt like it was paced differently. I don't know. I want to know if you guys agree with me on this, or maybe it's just me, but this episode felt fundamentally different from what we saw. And I think to understand why, we got to look at the main thing that happened this week, the introduction of Aoi. And before we talk about her in this episode, I want to talk about what I've thought of her up to this point. Because again, yeah, she was in episodes 1 and 2, but not really, or at least not in a way that was super important. But her real thing was when we just got like a picture of her in a V-jump or something, with a small little blurb that I never bothered looking at. When we saw the character, I did not get a Yugioh feeling to her. Go looks like he could fit, even if not in ways I like. But Aoi felt very different. You see, when you look at the other Yu-Gi-Oh girls, all 5 of them, they all have a very shonen-y type look. They're all pretty, they all have very feminine features, they're all very clearly meant to fit a certain role. And, which is fine, Yu-Gi-Oh is a shonen. But with Aoi, when I look at her, first up, she does not appear extremely feminine. I could almost see this design with some reworking and some retooling being for a boy. Like, change the hair a little bit and the eyelashes and all that, and give her some pants. You got a guy there. But she doesn't have very feminine features, and when you look at the expression, it's not very expressive. Like, she looks very cold, very distant, like she's not emotionally all there or emotionally totally connected. And I never got a different feeling from the OP or the ED. It feels very intentional, and I like it. Because the thing is that it instantly differentiates her from the other 5. It makes her stand out. It makes her unique. And I think that's very important, especially because we know that these shows have a history of screwing the pooch on the female character. So I really hope she goes somewhere, because this was a very interesting way to introduce her. First up, I like that, I thought it was kind of funny that she gave us the truth about Link Vrains, and I like the idea of, like, a dual idol, because I don't think they've really done that before in this. Yeah, they've had female duelists, but I don't think they've ever just flat out said, the dual idol! And you can make the argument, Cardfight Vanguard's done it, and all that, but I still kind of liked it. But then you see her as Aoi, and what I love is that her Blue Angel design is a typical Yu-Gi-Oh girl. Like the crazy hair, the cute face, the feminine body. It's 2 totally different takes, but it totally fits into her personality. What I liked about this episode is Aoi is very sort of emotionally distraught. And you can make the argument it's teen angst, but I thought it worked very well. Because it's that idea that she's very alone. Like, her only family is her brother, who is obviously very busy with his job, and kind of only takes a few minutes to check up on her, and then kind of turns it into being about him. And then you have, like, at the school, like, that one scene of her simply saying that everyone always just wants to get to my brother through me is such a good scene, because not only does it give you a great idea of what this girl's life is like with just 1 line of dialogue, but it also sort of kind of makes you kind of think, because that's exactly what Yusaku's doing. But I also like the fact that she's a lot like Yusaku, actually, when you think about it. They're both emotionally distant, and they both are very sort of lonely people. Yusaku, because he had a traumatic past. Aoi, because she is very alone at this moment. And I like the fact that the episode took time to really represent that. Just seeing the 2 walk together and how sort of mismatched it kind of feels like they are, I think in a lot of ways really says a lot about this relationship. And I think it's interesting that they almost kind of set this up like it's going to go in a romantic direction or a dramatic one. Because in the other Yu-Gi-Ohs, they felt very romantically stagnant. Like, they tried to put romantic relationships in them, but they never worked, and they never really went anywhere. When Yuto and Ruri are the only two of these girls, kids in these shows to actually hook up, that's a problem. But I liked it in this because it is setting a lot up, but it's like the guy even says at first, he goes, Yusaku can't talk to a girl. That feels very romantically. And then there's the Ignis scene where Ignis is like, I analyzed her and she is beautiful. First up, what did you analyze? Because until further notice, I'm assuming that computer program creepily looked at that 16-year-old girl. So, I dig it. I really like where this is going, and I like the colors in this episode too. A lot of good use of shadow, really sort of gave you an idea how alone she feels. And as for the rest of it, I also like the fact that the duel between Yusaku and Go had an impact, and it has a consequence. Like, everyone saw it, so therefore everyone's wondering why it happened. So everyone's questioning Soul Technologies, which means that Soul Technologies is going to get pressured as people keep asking questions, and Playmaker's going to have to deal with that, and Aoi's going to have to deal with that. I would love it if Aoi sort of led up like the sort of corporate espionage element of the plot while Yusaku dealt with the Knights of Hanoi. I think you could really give the character some good use to that. So for right now, I'm curious, I'm interested. The stuff with the Knights of Hanoi in this episode was whatever, and I like the idea that there's a duel club, because Yu-Gi-Oh! Clubs pop up a lot nowadays, especially at schools, so that way kids can play with other kids at their own level. I should know, it's kind of been costing my local people. But it's kind of a cool idea, and I'm glad it's finally referenced. And I kind of liked the scene there. I liked Yusaku sort of switching the decks, and I like the fact that, yeah, he switched the decks, but you sort of get the sense that Aoi is suspicious of him, just as Yusaku found out she was Blue Angel immediately. Like, I'm glad they don't drag that out several episodes. So that's good. I like the switching of the decks. And I like the kid, too, the president. I like that he was sort of this generic nice guy. We probably won't see much of him, but if they do stuff with him, that'd be nice. I think that's about it. I think I covered everything. If you like this episode, if you like the direction they're going with all these characters, let me know below. I'm legitimately curious to see what people think of this episode and this character. And as for this week's TCG question of the week, tell me what you think of the new OCG ban list. Do you think it's good? Do you think it's bad? Do you think we should adopt stuff of it? Do you think that everything on that ban list is a ways away for us from being to worry about? And as always, click to like and click to subscribe, and let's see where the duel goes.